All right. Welcome to the Processing Emotions workshop. Can everybody hear me? Check the chat to make sure. All right. Welcome everyone. Where's everyone tuning in from today? I'd love to hear where you're from. Saw somebody from Oregon signing on. Right, Delaware, Moscow, Spokane. South Dakota, New York, Colorado, Texas. All right, welcome everybody. Somebody from Utah, Arkansas, Indiana. Right. Well, thanks for coming today. This is by far my favorite topic when it comes to healing. It's what helped me most in my own healing journey, and it's also what I've seen move the needle most in others' journeys as well. Um, I'd love to know how you're doing, and not just how you're doing, but how are you really doing? When's the last time you thought about how am I really doing? Like, how's your soul? I want you to just take a second to think about that and just notice what's coming up. How are you really feeling? It's amazing when we take the time to slow down and even just ask ourselves this question, what can come up? You might just feel like you're being flooded with so many different feelings, or maybe you just feel kind of numb, like, I don't know, never really thought about it. The next thing I want you to do is I want you to type into the chat the main emotion that's coming up. When you think about how am I really doing right now? What's the dominant emotion for you? And then if you're comfortable, type it into the chat. And I want to know how you're feeling. Somebody says, I'm struggling, feeling afraid. Someone says, doing good, a bit confused, a bit overwhelmed on how to incorporate all that we've learned. Good, Andy, we'll get there for sure. What else? Insecure, feeling doubt. Somebody says, feeling fearful. A lot of insecure, doubt. Somebody feels content. I'd love to hear that. Need rest. Somebody feels sad. Lots of fear, lots of uncertainty, lots of stress and anxiety, anxious, uncertainty, sad. All right, you guys have named pretty much the range of emotions here. A lot of people feeling sad, heavy, angry, overwhelmed, weary, numb. A couple hopefuls in there, anxious, a lot of fear and sadness coming up. So whatever it is that you're feeling, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes for a second. And rather than thinking about why you might be feeling that way, I just want you to notice where in your body you feel that emotion. We're going to learn today a lot about emotions, but emotions are energy and motion. They actually happen in the body, not the mind. Even though it feels like it's happening in the mind, they're happening in the body. So where in your body are you feeling the emotion? Just sit with it, just sense it. Don't try to change it or loosen your body or judge it or think about it. Just sense it. Noticing what it feels like. Okay, a deep breath. You can open your eyes. So today we're going to learn just how powerful what you just did was. And while it might have felt really simple and like nothing shifted the first time you did this, when we do this regularly and over time, this act of asking yourself, how am I really doing, and tuning in and actually feeling the emotion in your body is one of the most powerful ways to show your nervous system that you are safe. You guys are learning with this work. When it comes to healing the nervous system, it's all about danger and safety. It's about creating more safety than perceived danger. When we don't take the time to slow down and process our emotions and ask ourselves, what's really there? How am I really feeling? We stay stuck in a perpetual state of fight or flight. So it might have felt really simple, or maybe like nothing shifted, but over time, doing this will change your life. And we're going to get into why. So before we jump in, a little bit of housekeeping. There's a couple of you that reached out in the Facebook group just expressing that shorter workshops, shorter newsletters, less information would feel more manageable and less overwhelming. And then I get feedback from others of you that you're loving it. The longer, the better, the more, the better. You're just soaking it all up. And I also understand that the main reason a lot of you are here is because you are overwhelmed, right? Your nervous system is already at capacity. And so it can really feel hard to absorb more. And I totally understand that. So moving forward, we'll meet in the middle. We'll keep the workshops closer to an hour, hour and a half, try to keep them less than 2, a maximum of 2, just so they're more digestible. I know you guys are learning a ton of valuable information in here. I think some of the best there is when it comes to healing the nervous system. However, if it's too overwhelming and you're not practicing it and incorporating it into your daily life, it doesn't really do much for you. Okay, so that brings me to my next point. After the 6-part series is over in December, I'll be putting on a workshop that is going to take all of this that you've learned in the last 6 months and simplify it. We're going to boil it down to the practical steps that you should be taking each day to practice this stuff on a regular basis so that you see results. Because I think a lot of you here jumped into this series thinking this is it. I'm going to heal. Maybe you even initially thought I'm going to spend a lot more time on this. You had good intentions, but since then you just kind of feel like you've been overwhelmed. Life's happened. You've fallen off the bandwagon. You're not practicing. Okay, so you're not feeling like you're making much headway. So keep in mind in December, we'll take everything we've learned, condense it down. I'll put it in one. Of Allie make one nice guidebook for you guys. So it's really straightforward. These are the things that move the needle most. Because I understand that all of you are busy and overwhelmed and life is happening and you just want somebody to put in front of you, what should I be doing every day? That's what this will be in December, okay? So hang tight for that. Also in the Facebook group, I was in there this week and saw a couple of you just expressing frustration. I was so hopeful. I thought this was going to be the thing to heal me, and I just haven't healed yet. I mentioned this in the beginning of the series, is it's really, really important that some of you along the way would use your symptoms, maybe flares of symptoms. You would use those symptoms as proof that what you're doing is not working. This mindset of, this isn't working for me, I need to find something else, is exactly what keeps us stuck in a state of perceived danger. And when we're in this state, we continue searching. And the combination of perceived danger and searching is exactly what perpetuates chronic symptoms. The act of constantly looking for evidence that healing isn't happening just keeps us trapped in this cycle of fear and stress and focusing on symptoms and trying to fix. This mindset constantly reinforces signals to the nervous system, I'm not safe where I am, which is exactly what is causing most of your symptoms. So if you're here and you're wondering why you haven't healed, my question for you is, since we've started this work, how much have you really changed? And I want you to be really honest with yourself. Our bodies are reflecting the deepest part of ourselves, right? We talked about how our bodies reflect our state. Our state of being is made up of our thoughts and emotions. So it might take more than a couple workshops to see massive shifts in this area of your life. Okay, it might not happen overnight, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. And I know it can feel slow at times and like nothing's happening, but it's really important to remember that showing up every single day and doing the work is what will ultimately lead to that breakthrough moment. That breakthrough moment for some of you could be tomorrow. I've been hearing from so many of you, Kate, I came into this with debilitating anxiety. It's like a thing of the past. My foot pain, my back pain, my gut issues, total thing of the past. So I'm hearing about a lot of you breaking through and healing, which is great. But those of you that aren't, I just want to remind you, your body is reflecting who you are. And if you haven't seen a massive shift in your symptoms, there hasn't been a massive shift in your state of being, in your thoughts and emotions. Every step you take, no matter how small or insignificant it feels, is building on that day, that moment when you break free. So just show up anyways, trust the process and recognize that the mindset of, oh no, this isn't working, going back into searching mode. Maybe I need to find another course, another supplement, another protocol, something else to try is the exact mindset that will keep you stuck in a state of perceived danger and keep your symptoms going. If you haven't healed yet, you most likely haven't changed your state, right? Your thoughts and emotions. Your body is reflecting who you are right now, not who you're trying to become. This is just how our bodies work. They reflect the patterns and the emotions that we carry. And this isn't to judge anybody or make anybody feel like they're doing something wrong. This is just how the body works. So if you're here and you're struggling, just take responsibility for the fact that, yeah, I showed up, I had great intentions, I wanted to apply all this, I wanted to conquer fear, and I wanted to have more elevated emotions, but I haven't yet, and that's okay. Healing does not have to happen overnight. It doesn't mean it's not happening, though. It is happening. So trust the process, show up anyways, and know that any moment could be that breakthrough moment. And so many of you have been reaching out. Like I said, just in the last week or so, I've heard from a couple dozen of you about your healing and breaking free and just feeling less anxious. Okay, before we get into the workshop, little disclaimer. It's something many of you need to hear. If you're still engaging in this work, whether it's the breathing, the trauma healing, what we're going to learn today, processing emotions, if you're still coming to this work to fix your health problems, you are going to perpetuate them. If you're fixated on being healed and arriving at this destination, in the future, you're reinforcing that there's something right now that's wrong with the moment. You're not safe where you are, is basically how the brain and nervous system interpret this. And this mindset will keep you stuck in a state of constant resistance, stress, dissatisfaction, which is just going to perpetuate symptoms and make it really hard to heal. I know it feels counterintuitive, but healing happens when we allow ourselves to just be present in the moment without making it wrong, without judging what's going on, and just embrace what it is and engage in this work because we want to be healthier, because we care about ourselves rather than constantly trying to fix or change the way things are right now. Because if we keep constantly sending ourselves a signal that this moment is wrong, it's not right, our body reflects who we are. So we'll continue to struggle to heal. So if this is you, just let go, try to surrender a little bit. Surrender the need to control the outcome. It's very counterintuitive, but healing happens when we stop trying to fix. Because again, our body is reflecting somebody who isn't well and desperately trying to heal. That's what your body is going to continue to reflect. If this is kind of confusing and doesn't seem super clear, it might be really helpful just to take some time to reflect on, where you're trying to get. What's that destination that you're just really trying to get to? I know for most of you, it's that you want to get rid of your chronic symptoms. And I totally understand that. But I also know the only way to get there is by understanding that your body is reflecting your why and your how more so than your what. what you're doing, breathing, all these things that you're learning, they're great, but your body is reflecting your why and your how, not just your what. So this means if you're coming to these practices to fix yourself, if how you're approaching them is from a state of fear and fixing and desperation and urgency, I got to get better, you'll continue to suffer no matter how effective the tool that you're using is. And it's hard to recognize this tendency in ourselves. A lot of this stuff happens unconsciously. There's still a lot of you here that are approaching your healing in the same way that contributed to your unwellness. The sole intent to alleviate symptoms, right? Being motivated by fear. And as long as that's the mindset, and again, I want to caution you, a lot of this happens unconsciously. But as long as that's the mindset, healing is going to be really difficult. We have to be able to come to this work from a place of love and care, not because you're broken and need fixing. If you approach your healing as though your body is inherently broken, you'll continue to reinforce the narrative and remain unwell. Don't ever forget that your body is reflecting who you're being, the state that you're in right now, not who you're trying so hard to become. So if you're continuing to be somebody that isn't well, you'll continue to be unwell. That's one of the most powerful things I can teach you. So much shifted for me once I realized that the person I was being was somebody who was desperate to heal. My whole life, everything was a checklist of like, I'm going to do this, then I'm this, and that. And even though they were great things, I was processing emotions. One of the most powerful healing tools there is, what you're going to learn today. I was breathing, another extremely powerful healing tool. I was using all these tools that are some of the most effective for when it comes to healing, but I was still doing them to get rid of my symptoms. I was still doing them because I desperate to heal. I was in a state of desperation. Again, that's what my body continued to reflect. Somebody who was desperate. Part of the reason I get so excited about talking about processing emotions is because when it comes to healing the nervous system, it's one of the most powerful tools I could possibly teach you. Because at the very root of nervous system dysregulation is a brain and a body that are perceiving danger. They don't feel safe. So to heal the nervous system, we have to show both the brain and the body that we're safe. As we've covered a little bit in here, Britt talked about it in the last workshop. The language of the nervous system is nonverbal. So we can't just say, hey, I'm okay, I'm safe, calm down, chill out, it's all good. 80% of the communication between the brain and the body goes from the body to the brain. So we have to show the nervous system we're safe. We talked about using somatics. Now we're going to use another really powerful tool today to show the nervous system we're safe. The reason processing emotions is one of the most powerful ways to show the nervous system that we're safe is because it allows us to confront the emotions and the feelings that so many of us, whether consciously or unconsciously, have been avoiding or running from for a lifetime. And as long as we're avoiding these feelings, whether we're doing it intentionally or unintentionally, the brain remains stuck in a state of perceived danger. And because so many of us have been avoiding these feelings for so long, our brains have learned to perceive our unfelt emotions as unsafe to feel. They're dangerous. So as long as these emotions remain unfelt, they will sit there, triggering the fight or flight nervous system, festering in the unconscious, keeping the body stuck in a state of survival, which makes healing really, really difficult. But when we stop avoiding and face and turn toward our feelings, turn toward our emotions and process them, we create safety. That's how we show the nervous system that we're safe. It's a really powerful way to release tension and stress. Essentially, when we're feeling our emotions, it tells the brain there's no immediate danger. There's nothing dangerous, too dangerous for us to feel. And this creates this massive sense of safety. Over time, this is how we move the body out of survival and into rest and repair. And all of you guys know by now that the body must be able to get into a state of rest and repair to heal. So in the newsletter, we talked about where these repressed emotions come from. Why are we repressing emotions? How does this happen? We talked about all the ways we do that. Some of us learn from a young age to suppress our feelings. Some of us may have been labeled as the easy child or easygoing. And so that meant that we suppressed anything that didn't align with that label so we could continue to receive love and attention. And then as a result, we grow up spending most of our lives pushing down the emotions that come up so we can maintain that image of being easygoing. Okay, there's so many different ways that we repress our emotions, and we covered a lot of these in the newsletter. We also covered how repressed emotions can make us sick, because I think for a lot of you, it can feel a little bit woo-woo, like how do repressed emotions, how is that causing my autoimmune disease? How do repressed emotions cause my gut issues? How can repressed emotions cause my bulging disc, my back pain? There is a lot of science. And to keep it really simple, we know that when repressed emotions are present, it triggers the fight or flight nervous system, keeping the body stuck in a state of threat physiology. As long as the nervous system is stuck in a state of threat physiology, it is going to be breaking down. The body is going to be in a state of catabolic state. It's literally breaking down faster than it can repair itself. This impacts every single system in the body, including the immune system. Okay, so if you haven't read the first two newsletters, make sure to refer back because it's really important to uncover where are these repressed emotions coming from. So not only are we going to learn how to process them, but we're going to learn to prevent them from accumulating in the first place. The reason this work has been so powerful for me is not just because I've been able to process the lifetime of emotions that were lurking, the ones that I needed to process to move my own body out of fight or flight and heal, but because you really get to know yourself and you really get to know, how am I generating tension? Where are these repressed emotions coming from? And over time, you can slow that accumulation by getting to know yourself, your personality traits, your tendencies, and where this tension is coming from. We'll get into that here in a little bit. So there's a lot of different ways to process emotions, so many different ways. And this is a topic that I've been researching for, probably a decade and a half now. And I'm familiar with most of the methods out there. There is one method, though, that consistently produces superior results. It's a form of journaling. It's been used for a really long time. I put my own spin on it. Essentially, what it does, in a nutshell, is it takes what was in the unconscious mind, repressed emotions, which are triggering the fight or flight nervous system, and takes them from there and moves them into the conscious mind. When you take stuff from the unconscious and you bring it out into the conscious, it moves the body out of fight or flight. So each time you process your emotions, you're moving your body out of a state of fight or flight and reinforcing this sense of safety. When you move toward your emotions and take the time to slow down and ask yourself the question, what's coming up, and you feel those emotions, you are showing your nervous system you're safe. Again, when it comes to healing the nervous system, there's nothing more important than showing the nervous system you're safe. Because the language of the nervous system is nonverbal, we have to show, we have to do things that show the nervous system we're safe. When you're doing this work, it's really important that you remember It isn't negative emotions themselves that make us sick. It's the ones we avoid and suppress and push down that fester in the unconscious mind that can contribute to illness. So when you're practicing this work, initially it can feel like Pandora's box. Like, whoa, there's just all this coming up, and you're going to feel like a mess because you're going to feel everything from anger to sadness to shame to feel it's all going to come up. It might feel like it's flooding you a little bit. We're going to talk about some ways to navigate that. But I want you to know that thinking about an emotion, processing an emotion that's quote negative, might be fear, might be sadness, might be anger, something that you may label negative. Feeling those emotions is not what's going to make you sick. It's avoiding those emotions that make you sick. So I think there's a lot of confusion in this work where people say, well, I don't want to sit here and, I don't want to feel any of this that isn't pleasant. It's just going to make me feel worse. We're going to get to that. But if you feel worse after processing emotion, it's because you're thinking about the emotion and not feeling the emotion. Okay, we'll get to that in a bit. But I just want you to know it isn't negative emotions that make us sick. It's avoiding and pushing down and not processing emotions that makes us sick. Okay. Nervous system dysregulation happens. I think a lot of you have said, okay, I just all of a sudden anxiety just hit me out of nowhere, or these gut issues, or this autoimmune. Like I was doing great, and I've never really been a stressed out or anxious person, and all of a sudden my health just deteriorated, and it just happened like that. So we get these symptoms when our nervous system reaches capacity. And the reason our nervous systems reach capacity is because of a lifetime of stress and unresolved trauma and unresolved emotions and years of repression and accumulation. So these symptoms don't just blindside us. We don't just, I was so happy and I was great. And all of a sudden I'm an anxious person. I have really bad anxiety. Over time, the trauma, repressed emotions, accumulated and the nervous system reached capacity. And that's when you got a symptom, whether it's anxiety, back pain, headaches. When the nervous system becomes dysregulated and reaches capacity, that's when we get symptoms. So by practicing processing emotions, we create more capacity in the nervous system. When you have more capacity in the nervous system, you have less symptoms, you feel happier, you feel less stressed. You actually feel like you're thriving rather than surviving. Okay, before we get into how to do this, there's a lot of you here who may be tempted to approach this processing emotions stuff in a way that basically makes it completely renders it ineffective, essentially. If you're doing anything to make a symptom go away, it won't work. And I'm saying this again because it's one of the most important things that you could ever here in your healing journey. Because if you don't understand it, healing's going to be really difficult. Healing happens when we can just let go of the need to fix and let go of coming to this work with conditions. If you can come to this work from a place of genuine care for yourself, like I just want to take care of myself. I just want to do what's healthy. And a genuine care for your pain and suffering, the stuff we're going to process, the stuff we're going to acknowledge, stuff we're going to practice meeting with compassion. We create space for those emotions to come up, not to fix, but because we care about ourselves. When we change how we engage in this work, everything shifts. Those of you that are moms, think about when your child is hurt and crying and they're upset. And they just want to be loved and comforted, but instead you're just approaching them like, hey, just they're another problem to fix. Might say something like, stop acting that way or just pull it together. They're just another problem to fix. They don't respond well to that, right? It's the same way that we approach ourselves. We're trying to fix our symptoms, we only create more pain and suffering. What we really need to practice is just compassion, kindness toward ourselves, just like we would a hurting child, right? That child wants to be cared for, not fixed. You're the exact same. So when you learn to approach this work from love and care for yourself instead of the mindset of fixing, that's when healing happens. Don't miss this crucial step or you will remain stuck. And for some of you, it might take time. Like this is a pattern that's been in place for a really long time. I was a perpetual fixer. Like I wanted to do something so I could see results. And every time something didn't work, oh, this isn't working. And we talked about in the beginning that mindset alone is what keeps you stuck. So that's why I'm saying this, because there's been several of you in the Facebook group saying, is anyone else frustrated? I'm not healing. Again, just that mindset. This isn't working, keeps you searching, keeps you stuck in a state of perceived danger, and will prevent you from healing. The day I started to heal was when I stopped using anything to fix me. It was not because I processed all my emotions and did it perfectly and had like the most effective way of doing it and worked with it. It wasn't because I healed all my trauma. It wasn't because I mastered my breathing techniques. It was because I stopped looking for solutions outside of myself. I stopped using anything and everything to fix me, which is essentially removing fear from the equation. As long as you're motivated by fear, your body will reflect that state. Once I realized there was nothing out there that was going to fix me, and that my body wasn't fighting against me, and that my symptoms were just my body's way of communicating, there was deeper work to do. Everything shifted when I just let go. So yes, processing emotions is extremely powerful, but it won't help you if you're using it to fix you. When you remove what fuels all chronic symptoms, which is fear and focus, hyper-focusing, that's when you will heal. So we can be doing all the right things and using all the right tools, but if how and why we're doing them is from a place of fear, that's what our bodies will continue to reflect. Okay, some of you along this journey, any of us along our healing journey, sometimes we need encouragement. And then other times we just need someone to tell us the truth. The truth right now is none of these tools are going to fix you. No external solution or method is going to fix you. What's going to transform you and your health is changing who you are being. Shifting your identity, embracing a new way of being, and letting go of the part of you that's always seeking the next fix. Letting go of the part of you that's driven by fear. And understanding that peace and safety, they come from within, not chasing solutions, but from becoming your own solution. There's no more powerful way to show the brain and nervous system you're safe than to stop with the fixing. So how do you know you moved past this fixing. The answer is how you respond to your symptoms. So when you get a flare or you notice a new symptom pop up, maybe you notice your old symptom there, your immediate thought is, oh no, this isn't working. Got to try something else. You are fueling the very thing you're trying to heal. And this fear and doubt is what feeds symptoms and keeps you stuck in a state of chronic health issues. But if you don't let these symptoms scare you and distract you, and you continue to just do the deeper work from a place of care, love for yourself, this is when you'll overcome them. You have the power to choose exactly how you respond to your symptoms. And how you respond to your symptoms is either going to fuel them and perpetuate the cycle of chronic symptoms or cool them so they can just fade into the background. Your response determines exactly that. One of the most common misconceptions, disillusions, traps that people fall into surrounding this work is the belief that once you do this and you check the stuff off your list and you breathe well and you process your emotions and you heal your trauma, that you're going to be healed and symptom free. This is not the truth. This is not true for me. It's not going to be true for you. And yes, while I have successfully healed from 15 or more chronic health issues, my body still from time to time presents symptoms. Symptoms are how our bodies communicate. Okay, the goal of this work is not to eliminate all your symptoms, but to learn how to decipher your body's communication. So when a symptom pops up, rather than going into, oh no, do I need to go back to my chiropractor? Oh, I need to do another gut protocol. Oh no, there's my anxiety. Should I get back on those antidepressants? That will fuel the symptoms. Or you can cool the symptoms by responding differently. Okay, I have a headache, a symptom, something just popped up. My body is communicating. My nervous system is telling me it's at capacity. What do I need to do? What's one of the best ways to create capacity in my nervous system to process my emotions? Okay, which is what we're going to learn how to do here in just a bit. Do not fall for the trap that once you check all these things off your list, you're going to be, quote, healed and never have another symptom. That's not realistic. That's not the goal. It's never going to happen. Your body will still communicate to you via symptoms. It's just, are you deciphering the message? Or are you using that symptom as another thing to fix, as more of a sign that you're not healing, that you are broken beyond repair? Okay, we get to choose how we respond to these. Okay, before we jump into the workshop, there's a couple reminders about this work. You're not going to be good at this overnight. You're not going to be good at feeling your emotions overnight. So many of us spend our entire life doing the opposite of feeling. And there's a lot of you out there that have been told that you're empaths and you're empathic and you just feel like you feel so much. And what you're going to learn when you start to do this work is those of you that feel like you're big feelers, a lot of you are big thinkers, because when we become overwhelmed by our emotions and we think we feel so much of the overwhelm and what we're actually noticing is our thinking about our emotions. Okay. And we're going to really get into the difference today because it's really important that we understand the difference. But as you approach this work, understand you're not going to be a good feeler overnight, and that's okay. So many of us have been using thinking as a way to avoid feeling ever since we were younger. It's a way to cope with really big emotions. It's much easier to think than it is to feel because feeling can feel overwhelming at first. Okay, a lot of us have just been avoiding painful emotions altogether. It might be how we saw our parents do it. It's just how we've coped. When we avoid or overthink our feelings, we magnify our suffering. And when we learn to feel those emotions and those feelings, we dissolve it. feeling is what will heal. Avoiding and thinking will perpetuate suffering. In order to move from thinking to feeling, we have to be able to practice mindfulness. It's part of the reason we started out the series talking about the importance of mindfulness and your ability to feel rather than get stuck in your head creating stories and analyzing, intellectualizing. That's where so much of our suffering comes from. It might be a good time to refer back to the mindfulness section just to practice that again. How do we be with rather than become swept away by these feelings? Be able to observe our emotions without just becoming them and just being so overwhelmed by them. It requires us to be able to be mindful, to move from thinking to feeling, because as long as we're thinking, we're going to perpetuate suffering. It's going to feel like it's just so much. And again, a lot of you that are empathic and empaths, you grew up using thinking as a way to avoid feeling because you just felt so much and it was a way to cope with it all. Okay, so when we're processing emotions, it's really important to keep in mind that emotions happen in the body, energy and motion, and they also typically last about 90 seconds. So the first step in processing emotions is more of a cognitive one. Yes, we're going to be thinking about naming, identifying the emotion, but to actually feel and dissolve and show the nervous system that we're safe has more to do with sensing and feeling. It's more of a somatic, body-based approach to healing rather than a cognitive one where we're thinking about the story and what happened and why, analyzing it. The process of moving from a big thinker to being able to feel, again, does not happen overnight. So be really patient with yourself when you're doing this work. You've established those ways to cope for a really long time. Thinking is a really helpful way to cope until it's not so helpful at all, because the more we think about our emotions, the more we perpetuate our suffering. But when you feel your emotion, you actually sense them in your body, that's what dissolves them. A simple way to know if you're doing this work right and you're actually processing emotions is if you're thinking about them too much, you're going to feel worse afterward. If you're feeling them and sensing them in your body, you're going to feel a sense of relief and like you released something. You're going to feel lighter. But if you don't feel lighter, there's a really good chance that you're dwelling, intellectualizing, resisting, judging. You're thinking about the emotion. That's going to make you feel worse, more tension. So when you're doing this work, do your very best to not overthink it. Anytime you feel heavier or more upset after engaging in this work, it's likely that you're thinking again, and it's okay. It's going to take time to move from a thinker to a feeler. Okay, another reminder before we get into this work is that it has a cumulative effect. So consistency is really important. Just like going on a walk every day, the results happen over time, not after one session. This is the same. Picture your reservoir of repressed emotions. It's at capacity. If you have chronic health issues, your reservoir of repressed emotions is at capacity. One session, dumping a little bit out, helpful, feel lighter, feel better. Yes, moving the body out of fight or flight, not going to create a ton of capacity in one session. Consistency is key because it has a cumulative effect. Okay, third reminder. There is something called a window of tolerance. This is a range of emotions we can comfortably handle without overwhelming ourselves. We push too far outside that window, we're diving into our biggest traumas and trying to have some massive cathartic release. We're going to overwhelm our nervous system. So more is not better. Again, this practice builds capacity over time. You want to start with what feels manageable and process it and feel it and let it come up to the surface. And as you do this, and you get better at feeling, making sure you're not getting in your head because that's going to make things harder. It's going to make you feel worse. You'll build capacity, and over time, you'll be able to process those things that are a little bit harder. You'll have more capacity to be with those emotions. So if this work is new to you, don't dive into your biggest traumas and try to have some massive release. That's not how this works. You have a window of tolerance, and you just want to be aware of that. Honoring your body. If something feels too overwhelming, back off, take a break, come back. It's these small steps over time that are to contribute to you having more capacity in the nervous system, not one big massive session, okay? It's also not helpful to search for repressed emotions. So many of you, there's a lot of people talking about how repressed emotions cause chronic symptoms. I get a lot of questions online, a lot of looking on a lot of other people's Instagram pages. What is the emotion? Trying to figure out what emotion is causing the suffering, digging into the unconscious mind, trying to identify it. Trying to dig for the cause or search for the root is just going to cause more stress, more tension, and more frustration. It's really hard for us to be aware, but a lot of us tend to approach our healing with the same kind of intensity and desperation that made us unwell, that brought our nervous systems to the place that they are. So just keep in mind that digging's not helpful. It can be really, really counterproductive. And so again, doing this work just from a place of care for yourself, bringing a sense of lightness to the practice. It is not about searching and digging and finding that one emotion that's going to release, and then your X, Y, or Z is going to be gone. Healing happens when we stop trying to control and push and search and just creating more stress and more resistance for ourselves. Just letting go of needing something to happen can be really, really helpful. Okay, so as you're doing this work, I know there's a lot of noise in this space. Some of you are wondering, like, should I be kicking and screaming and releasing or doing MDR or working with a therapist or chanting around a fire? Like, how do I release this stuff? There's a lot of noise in this space. And overthinking all of it is just going to keep you stuck and add more stress and tension. The most important thing to do is learn this simple process that we're just about to dive into. Don't overthink it and do it consistently. And watch as your body responds. As your body finally receives a signal that it's actually safe to feel all of this. I know you've been running from a lifetime, whether consciously or unconsciously, but it's safe to feel all of this. Again, sending one of the most powerful safety signals that you can to your nervous system. Be aware, you're going to want to overthink, and the more you think, the less you're going to be able to feel. A really, really smart mind-body practitioner told me when I was learning this work, he said, we cannot think and feel at the same time. And as long as we're thinking, we're going to be suppressing. Let that sink in. It's really powerful. So we shift our focus away from the cognitive and the stories and the analyzing. So many of you are processing in your mind, which perpetuates suffering, causes more tension. And we allow ourselves to experience the emotions in our bodies. That's what paves the way for healing. That's how we heal. Okay, so how do we journal? Everybody's still awake. You guys should have notes to follow along. Allie also put together a really nice guidebook. So this is all laid out. You don't need to remember any of this. So just do your best to soak it all in as you listen here. This is how we process emotions, okay? It is a journaling technique. We're going to go through it. I'm going to give you an option at the end to practice it with me. If you're at capacity and you feel like you've just had enough with all of this, you can jump off and revisit. Remember, all of these are recorded, so you can always come back to the recording and listen on your own time. Okay, step 1, create a safe space. This is really, really important. the results of the practice are cumulative. So a daily practice is going to give you the best results. Some people want to do it in the afternoon, others want to do it in the morning. It's totally up to you, but you just need to find a time and a place that fits into your schedule, whatever works for you. And just remember that consistency is the key to becoming more skilled at processing your emotions. Again, you're not going to be good at it the first time you do it. So you want to establish a routine and make sure you have a safe, quiet place. You need a comfortable place where you can write without distractions. Ideally, this is a private place because nobody should be reading what you're going to write. Okay. If you get into a flow, you want to write for about 10 minutes a day. If you feel like you're getting into a flow and you have more to express and more to process, that's totally fine. Just try to commit to at least 10 minutes for a daily minimum. Before you get started, try to remove any barriers, understanding that people running around, interruptions, chaos, all of that is just going to pull you out of feeling and into thinking. That can interrupt the process. And then also pay really a close attention to your self-talk and your internal dialogue. Like, why are you doing this? This is silly. You're so weak. You have so many emotions. All of that is going to prevent those feelings from coming to the surface. We have to set the stage with some self-compassion. We talked about self-compassion beginning this series because it is literally the thing that lifts the lid off the reservoir of your repressed emotional world, right? These unconscious emotions, and allows them to come to the surface. If they do not feel safe in the presence of your judgment, they won't come to the surface. Meaning the more self-critical you are, the more repressed emotions you have, and the less are going to come up to the surface. When you start to create an environment of safety and kindness, understanding for yourself, and acknowledge the pain and suffering, and stuff starts to come up to the surface, again, that is when the healing happens. And so many of you need to brush up on the self-compassion because the environment right now doesn't feel safe, and your lid over the top of your repressed emotions is still on. So just be aware of any self-talk that comes up. Okay, step 2. You're going to start with a prompt, or you can begin by answering the question, how am I really doing, or what's disturbing my peace? 10 minutes you're writing about. How am I really doing, or what is disturbing my peace? Okay. If you're new to this work, it can be really helpful to use prompts just so you kind of know what you're going to write about. There's 3 categories. Again, this is all outlined in the guidebook: past, present, and personal. The past would include childhood stuff that happened earlier in life, traumas, anything like that that comes up that feels like it was never fully processed. The present is kind of the more day-to-day stuff, relationships, careers, finances, day-to-day stressors. The personal category has more to do with your personality traits and tendencies and how those influence you, how those cause you to repress emotions. So again, all of this is in the guidebook. I even put a bunch of prompts in there for you. You can use a prompt if you're new to this work, or you can start by answering the question, what is disturbing my peace, or how am I really doing? You're going to write for 10 minutes. You're going to let the words just flow. You're not going to worry about grammar or structure or how ugly or raw those emotions might seem. You're going to let it all out. You're going to tell the whole truth, holding nothing back. If you've felt this emotion at some point, it needs to be expressed. And the journal is a really good spot to do this, just to unleash whatever it is thoughts, emotions, whatever it is, let it out and just be brutally honest. Even if it feels super intense or uncomfortable, there's a lot of us that are goodists. Maybe we are Christian people, or we just try to be grateful people. And all of this just feels like complaining. I am so blessed. I have a roof over my head, and please do not bright side yourself by processing your emotions. It's actually one of the least selfish things you can do, because once you just get it all up and out and you let yourself have that expression, it moves you from a lower energy state where you are repressed, energy is stuck, to a higher energy state where your emotions are more elevated. And now you feel lighter. And now you genuinely are a happy person and have more to offer the world, people around you. Do not bright side yourself. Let it come up and out, no matter how scary or ugly or icky. Okay. Don't hold back. This is how we release. This is how we become separate from those feelings. So just remember to tell the whole truth. As you're writing, make sure, again, that you're not falling into like, this just doesn't matter and you should be grateful. Any type of self-criticism, you really want to validate your feelings. I think for a lot of us, spent a long time dismissing our pain, belittling what we've gone through. And it's just time to validate. Of course you feel this way. Life is hard sometimes. Let yourself express it. You're not weak. You're not too much. Be aware of those labels that you give yourself and the ways that you might judge yourself when you're doing this work. Validate your feelings. Again, creating that environment of safety. It's okay for things to come up to the surface. And it's really important to tell the whole truth. Really, really important. Again, no one's going to read this. This isn't what you tell your therapist or your husband. It's just, if it was felt, it needs to be expressed. An example of how important this telling the whole truth is, I want you to imagine a mom and she's just feeling super exhausted and overwhelmed. She feels defeated and she's just realizing this life is just not what she wanted. Kids are driving her nuts. The demands of life just feel like too much. And she's just hesitant to even allow herself to tell the whole truth and to express these emotions. Because what kind of a mom can't stand their children? What kind of a mom says this isn't the life that I'd hoped for? Okay, so she has two choices. She can write down those emotions without a filter and just validating, yes, this is hard, struggling, angry, I'm scared. Or she can repress those feelings, which is just going to trigger the fight or flight nervous system. And she's going to end up with headaches and inflammation and eventually, who knows, even an autoimmune disease. That choice of, am I going to tell the truth and let this up and out without judging myself and making myself a bad person? Or am I just going to let all of this out? I'm not going to act on any of it. I'm not going to give my children away. I'm not a bad mom. It's just hard. Life is hard. This is hard right now. I'm not complaining. I'm not grateful. If you felt a certain way and you push it down, you will trigger the nervous system. And yes, eventually this can lead from everything to a headache, to a gut issue, to a full-blown autoimmune thing, to cancer. We know that repressed emotions are one of the leading causes of chronic health issues. It's proven by science. This stuff is important. Telling the whole truth is insanely important. And for those of you that are moms or just afraid that if I express this and say this, what am I going to like? I can't give my kids away. We have to differentiate between expression and action, right? Expressing emotions does not mean we're going to act on them. And in fact, when you do express your emotions and your frustration, your fear, your sadness, your anger, guess what? It makes you more emotionally regulated, more stable. And then you're actually going to be a more regulated mom, less irritated, right? We talked about capacity. One of the number one things I hear from women who do this work on a regular basis is I just don't feel as overwhelmed. My kids don't irritate me as much. Where before I did this work, I just felt constantly triggered. Like I was at capacity. Someone would walk in, and I was just like, I was at capacity. This is how we create more capacity. And just because you express does not mean you're going to take action. Okay. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Nicole Sachs, but she is a mind body practitioner. She was debilitated with chronic back pain for years. What finally allowed her nervous system to come out of fight or flight for her to heal and get rid of her back pain was actually telling the whole truth about her frustrations with being a mom. The stuff she thought, if I say this, I'm just going to be a horrible person. Like, I can't believe when she allowed that stuff to come to the surface without judging herself and just saying, yeah, life's hard. This is how I feel right now. Might not be how I feel tomorrow, but right now this needs to come up and out. Because again, if you push it down, it's going to keep you stuck in fight or flight. When she let that come up and out, and her nervous system finally moved out of fight or flight, her back pain, her debilitating back pain, the back pain she was told she would have to have multiple surgeries for, went away. That's the power of telling the whole truth. Okay, do not put a filter on it. This is why this is more powerful than talking to a therapist or a good friend, because we all show up wanting to be perceived a certain way in the world. We want to be strong. We want to have it all together. We want to be calm. That's not how we always feel. That's not the whole truth. That's not allowing ourselves to fully express everything. And that's why we use a journal, because we're not going to read it again. Nobody's going to read it. It's the whole and ugly truth. Okay, step 3. Feel the emotions in your body. This is where we move from thinking to feeling. So we've identified the emotions. You've written for 10 minutes. You're telling the whole truth. There it is on paper. Once you've identified what it all is, the emotions that you're feeling, what's disturbing your peace, you've done that cognitive processing. It's now time to shift from the thinking, right, the cognitive part, to the sensing, the feeling part. Remember, emotions are energy in motion. So you're going to start to observe what's happening in your body. And this is how we move the energy. This is how we dissolve this, right? If we push it down, the energy gets stuck. If we move toward the sensation, toward the emotion in our body, we practice noticing the tension, the warmth, the tightness, whatever the sensation is, and allowing yourself to just experience it. Don't judge it. Don't try to make it go away. Don't think about it. Notice if you do start to think about it. Try to get out of your head, back into your body, back into sensing rather than thinking. Focus on being with the feelings and letting the feelings be. Your emotions want to be felt, not fixed. And all of the fixing is perpetuating your suffering. When you find your mind wander and you start to notice that you're thinking or creating stories, or bring it back to the body, focus on sensation without explanation, just sensing what's going on here. And once you learn how to be with these emotions that happen in your body without intellectualizing them and thinking about them and creating more stories, this is when they start to dissolve. The intensity goes down. And this is when you walk away from the practice feeling lighter, because feeling is healing. Again, you're not going to be good at this overnight. So many of you are going to struggle with feeling. You're going to constantly find yourself back up in your head and thinking, and keep coming back to your body. Keep practicing mindfulness so that you can learn how to dissolve and just put an end to these emotions, fully process them. Because as soon as you get back stuck up in the head, you won't be able to complete the processing, okay? Last thing you're going to do is you're not going to go into analyzing mode. You're going to dispose of what you've written down. There's no need to go over it, rehash it. This is not a journal where you're recounting your day and you're going to read it again. And this is totally different than that. Write it down, tell the brutally honest truth, express it, become separate from it, get it out, move from cognitive to sensing, feel rather than think, and get rid of it. It's not meant to be read again. That's it. That is how you process emotions. There's not a right or a wrong way to do it. Whatever you do, do not overcomplicate this practice. So many of you are going to bring perfectionistic tendencies into this practice. And am I doing this right? And was I thinking? And you're going to, it's just going to cause you to overthink. And the more you think, the less you're going to feel. And the less you feel, the less you're going to heal. So just, again, loosen the grip. So many of you are going to be tempted to just overcomplicate this whole thing and dig for emotions. Don't fall into the trap. Just follow these steps. Don't overcomplicate them. Try to feel more than you're thinking. And over time, without a doubt, this practice will significantly improve the quality of your life. Just keep it simple, keep it consistent, and just trust the process. Trust that you are feeling and you are healing. And when you get done journaling, if you feel like you need to move, that can be a helpful way to sort of, they call it completing the cycle of stress or releasing the energy. Remember, we talked about emotions, they are energy. And so oftentimes we can feel like we need to do a walk. When we watch animals in nature, oftentimes when they're processing trauma, they'll shake. It's a way to process and move the energy, so that can be helpful. It's not something you have to do. Again, you don't want this to be this regimented, like you have to do this all perfect, and then you do this, and then you move, and then you shake, and then just show up. Tell the whole truth, let it come up and out. Practice the feeling rather than the overthinking, okay? It's really, really a simple, really, really powerful tool. And when done over time has a cumulative effect. And each time you do it, and especially when you get better at feeling and processing, I have seen this work help people overcome more chronic health issues than I can even list. It's really, really powerful. Remember, when you're engaging in this work, don't be tempted to do it a couple times and then to show up in the Facebook group and say, nothing's happening, I haven't healed yet. Okay, all this does is confirm that you're still approaching this work to fix yourself. I can tell you, many of you are still using this mindset. You will not feel safe, which is what is the thing that's going to move you out of fight or flight, move you out of survival, until your body knows, till you know that you're actually going to make this work a lifestyle and not another quick fix. So if you're here and you haven't healed because you're not adopting these tools as a way of life, you're seeing them as another thing that you need to do, check off your list, rather than something or someone you need to become. Remember, our bodies reflect who we are, not what we do. So this work isn't something we do. Our bodies reflect who we are. And over time, when you start to engage in this work more, what happens is you'll notice day to day you're not suppressing as many emotions, because as you do this work, you start to learn, okay, I am somebody who's a perfectionist. And so I'm constantly generating shame. Nothing's ever good enough. So when you get a headache, instead of assuming you have a brain tumor or you need to try another diet, you might just notice your nervous system is at capacity, right? That's when we get a symptom. And so you'll say, all right, I know where I need to look. I'm constantly generating shame. Tune into that shame, process that shame, let it come up and out, acknowledge it, feel it, and notice how your body moves out of fight or flight. Again, do not come to the work to get rid of the headache, because it doesn't work that way. You can't use it with a means to an end, because it won't work that way. All you're going to do is perpetuate danger, more symptoms. Okay, so over time, you'll notice that you're not suppressing as many emotions, because you really get to know yourself and where you're generating tension in your life. For me, I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself. So when something pops up, I check in. In what ways have I been putting a lot of pressure on myself? Whoa, all of that was there. I had no idea. I was too busy to even notice. I had all this pressure building up. Needed to do some processing, create some more capacity. As you're doing this work, you will also notice you'll start to be able to process your feelings on the go a little bit more. Whoa, I didn't even notice that that had come up. And rather than just pushing it down because you're too busy or because you don't want to feel it, you start to recognize how insanely important it is to process your emotions and actually feel what's there rather than avoid. Whether you're avoiding consciously or unconsciously, it doesn't matter. It all ends up in the same reservoir of repressed emotions. So you'll start to suppress and accumulate less, which is really nice. Processing things on the go. I think some of my favorite part about doing this work is truly getting to know where where I'm generating stress and tension in my life, where that's coming from. Because again, if you can identify the source, and you're not going to accumulate as much, there's not going to be as much to process. It's not about creating a stress-free life either, okay? It's just about processing the stress that does come up so that it doesn't show up in your body and sabotage your health. So a tool that might be really helpful for you guys that are just learning to become more aware, wanting to process more on the go so you're not accumulating as much, is a technique called RAIN. It's created by Tara Brach. You might be familiar with her. She's a self-compassion. She's written several books. She's amazing. Recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture is what RAIN stands for. So recognize and become more aware of your emotional world, just recognizing what emotions are coming up. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Noticing, just becoming more aware. Then you're going to allow yourself to feel the emotions without judgment. You can write, you can reflect on them, and just reminding yourself it's okay to feel whatever comes up. There's no need to suppress. You don't need to fix feelings. Remember, feelings don't want to be fixed. They just want to be felt. They just want you to be present with them. And then investigate, where in my body am I feeling these emotions? That will move you from the cognitive, the thinking, to the sensing, the sensory, and the feeling. And then last step, nurture. Just take a little bit of time to validate your experience. Remind yourself, I make sense. I'm not crazy. Yes, that was intense, but I'm not a bad mom. I'm not a bad person. It's okay to feel this way. And that's it. RAIN can be really helpful to remember. Just something to take with you on the go, processing on the go. When you get a symptom, when you notice your symptom, a gut issue, skin issue, headache, whatever it is, aching back, this is a signal from your nervous system that it is reached capacity. Symptoms serve as reminders and sort of tell us the state of our nervous system. Typically, the more dysregulated somebody is, the more symptomatic, the more intense their symptoms are, the more range of different symptoms they have. Whatever you suppress, your body will express. That's just how our bodies communicate. And that is why this tool is the one that I am so insanely grateful for. Not only did it help me overcome a long list of chronic health issues, but when something comes up, because we're never healed. Symptoms are never, we don't arrive at this place of being symptom free. Symptoms are how our bodies communicate. When a symptom pops up for me, I know exactly what to do and what not to do, right? We talked about how we respond to those symptoms that pop up either fuels them or cools them. If you respond in, oh no, my gut, I need to do another protocol. Maybe I picked up another parasite, and we start focusing in fear, and pretty soon that little gut ache that was just your body's way of saying, hey, like you need to slow down, you need to process emotions, you're going way too fast again, you're being way too hard on yourself again, you're accumulating a ton of tension and stress that we need to let the pressure valve out. When you decipher your body's messages, you don't have to get swept away in the fear and the focus that is the fuel for those gut issues to become completely chronic. This is truly the greatest gift of having this knowledge and understanding that's how my body's communicating. That's what it's trying to tell me. Otherwise, we're just going to go right into fear and focus and what was a little gut thing that was just your body's way of trying to say, hey, take a break, slow down. You're not setting boundaries. You're doing too much again. You're taking too much on. Stomach ache is literally your body's way of trying to communicate that. But rather than decipher the message, we just miss it all together. And now we're off to the next gut protocol, seeing another nutritionist, trying another diet, completely missing what your body's trying to say. Having this knowledge saves you so much time and frustration and energy and heartache. Because again, when stuff pops up for me, I know what to do. And both my husband and I would just assume like, oh, your knee is acting up. That's kind of, and rather than, oh no, we got to get to the PT. And not to say, yes, sometimes we do need to see a doctor. I'm not telling anyone to neglect their body signals, but so often these things that pop up are our body's form of communication. And if we can calm the nervous system, the symptom goes away. Having that knowledge will change your life forever, because now you don't have to spend a life constantly going to the next appointment, where you just feel like your body is just one chronic symptom after the next. When the nervous system comes into balance and we start to decipher our body's communication and get the message and actually listen and do the work and process and feel the hard stuff and move the body out of fight or flight, we won't get as many symptoms. Since I've been doing this work, I haven't had any chronic symptoms that are like compromising the quality of my life. Stuff comes and goes, and it's 99% of the time, it's my body's way of communicating that I'm generating tension. It's time to do some processing. It's time to do this work. Okay. So for anyone who wants to stick around, we can practice this together and just kind of go through the steps outlined. If you feel like you're at capacity and you want to sign off, now is a great time to jump off. I will leave it up to you. You can stick around or you can jump off. We're a little over an hour in. How's everybody doing? What's going on in the chat? If you have a piece of paper and something to write with, that would be really helpful. Otherwise, you can just do this processing, just closing your eyes in your mind. It's up to you. If you feel like this is enough and you just want to absorb what we've gone over, now's a good time to jump off. Otherwise, we'll practice this together, okay? If you have something to write with, again, doing this work and there's something powerful about becoming separate from it, writing it down. You can also process on the go. I do a ton of processing on the go. Now, I did start with a regular journaling practice and get really, really good at it. And do it consistently because it's a cumulative practice. But you can also do it on the go. You can do it in the shower. You can do it on your commute home from work. If you've got something to write with, that's great. If not, that's okay. You can just close your eyes and we'll just do it in your head for now. Okay, we're going to tune back in. And I want you to ask yourself the question again. What right now is disturbing my peace? And I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to write it all out or to think about it. This is the cognitive part. Just let the words flow. Don't hold anything back. No one's going to read this. No one's going to judge you. I'm not going to ask you to share this. Just let it all out. Tell the honest truth. What right now is disturbing my peace? Just rage on the page if you have to. Let it all up and out. A couple minutes here to just think about it. Notice any judgment. Notice any resistance. Just practice a little kindness and compassion, a little validation. It's okay. You make sense. It's okay to just let this up and out. Doesn't mean anything about you. Doesn't mean you're crazy or unstable or too sensitive or whatever. Don't go there. Just let it out. Okay. We're going to shift from thinking about those feelings. And we're just going to sense where they're happening in the body. Paying attention to the physical sensations, remembering that emotions are energy in motion. Might feel tight somewhere, feel warm, might feel kind of like a vibrating or a burning, just sensing what's happening in the body. If you find yourself thinking, come back into your body, just moving toward the sensation in your body. Understanding that as you move toward that energy, as you move toward those emotions that many of you have been avoiding, whether intentionally or unintentionally for a very long time, moving toward them is one of the most powerful ways to show your nervous system you're safe. And as long as you can stay present with them without thinking and getting back up into the cognitive, you're dissolving that energy. Just sensing where they are and what it feels like. Okay, if you wrote something down, remember you can just get rid of it. It's not to rehash or reanalyze, or you can just open your eyes if you're just doing that in your head. And sometimes when we do this work, we feel just more calm. We just feel better immediately. Than other times, nothing feels like it shifted. Might just feel really subtle. Even when it feels like something significant didn't happen over time, again, this practice is cumulative, showing the nervous system I'm safe, moving the body out of fight or flight, getting better at feeling and not thinking. This is how we process. We acknowledge our suffering, we meet it with validation, compassion, feel it in our bodies, and then we release it. In this simple process over time, will absolutely transform your life and your health. Not only is processing emotions one of the most effective ways to heal the nervous system, but it's also one of the most powerful forms of self-care. It's about caring about yourself enough and your emotional well-being enough to take the time every single day to ask yourself the question, how am I really doing? It's being that good friend to yourself, the one you've always wanted. Some of the most healing work you can do. Taking the time to acknowledge the pain, stuff that you've been pushing down, running from, coping with, and just meeting it with kindness, which is what dissolves it and prevents it from impacting your mental and emotional and physical health, as well as your relationships. I can tell you when I do this work, I have so much more capacity for life and the things that happen. And I feel so, I don't feel as overwhelmed. I feel much more calm. I feel like I'm actually thriving in my life versus surviving. When I don't practice this, and there's been periods in my life when I've been better at it and not so great at it. When I don't practice this, I notice I'm irritable, I'm easily triggered, I get more symptoms, I have more headaches and aches and pain, just stuff. My body's just trying to say, hey, like you're at capacity, you're generating a bunch of tension. It is night and day different when you do this work, and every single day you show up as that good friend, one you've always wanted, and you ask yourself that question, how am I really doing? Do not underestimate the power of this work. Like I mentioned, I have seen it help. I've seen this work help others overcome everything from anxiety, depression, insomnia, chronic pain, digestive issues, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia, cancer, headaches, chronic mold, Lyme. I mean, the list is because when we heal the nervous system and we understand that that's how we move the body out of fight or flight, feeling our emotions, not thinking about them, feeling our emotions. And we continue to do this work and we move from a place of threat physiology, which is just chronic inflammation, to rest and repair, and the body starts to heal. It is insanely powerful work. Many of you here have those symptoms that I listed or some type of chronic health issue, but you're struggling to make that connection between your symptoms and your repressed emotional world or your ability to process your emotions. Do not overlook the power of this connection because you're going to miss out on a massive opportunity to heal. And just remember, when you're practicing this work, we come to this work with our imperfections, right? Some of us are super type A and we're just perfectionists and we're just wanting to do everything perfect and we're gripping it so tightly and we want to do it just right so that maybe this will help. Remember, don't ever come to this work with conditions. We don't do this to get rid of symptoms. We do this to care for ourselves. That's how we send ourselves a signal of, yes, I care. I'm doing this from a place of love rather than from a place of fear. It shifts everything as our bodies are reflecting our state, not who we're trying so hard to become. Notice your tendency to overthink. So many of you who think you're big feelers are actually big thinkers. Notice that about yourself. It's going to take some practice to learn how to feel. But as you do this, not only does your body move out of fight or flight, and yes, your symptoms improve or go away altogether, but you just feel so much more peaceful because now you're just moving through the world, thinking less and feeling more. Again, not generating as much tension in your life. It's not about doing this just right. Okay, that's just going to create resistance. So just again, loosen up, make this practice yours, and just focus on freely expressing without judgment, without trying to come to this practice and do it perfectly. Okay, your ability to tolerate discomfort, your ability to be with these emotions is the single most powerful regulating tool you could ever cultivate. I'm going to say that one more time. Your ability to tolerate discomfort or be with these painful emotions is the single most powerful regulating tool you could ever cultivate. Just like I mentioned in the trauma healing workshop, what heals trauma isn't about reliving the event, right? We don't go back and need to hash it over. It's about learning to be with that stored alarm, learning to be with the nervous system that became dysregulated from the trauma, feeling that dysregulation, feeling that overwhelm and distress. Being with the alarm is what dissolves it. Being afraid of the alarm and thinking about it, trying to solve it and focus, that's what amplifies it. Repressed emotions are the exact same. When we move toward this stored alarm, toward these painful emotions, rather than avoiding or suppressing them, that's when healing happens. That's what increases nervous system capacity and dissolves the emotional charge that trauma or that repressed emotion holds over you. It's a gradual process, just facing what's inside of you, processing it, feeling it without becoming overwhelmed. And that's where the mindfulness, the feeling is so helpful. It's insanely powerful. This is how over time we start to feel safe in our bodies. There's nothing more to run from. There's nothing we need to avoid. There's nothing too big or too scary for us to have the capacity to be able to just sense it. If you get in your head and start thinking about it all, it's going to be you're going to go outside the window of tolerance. It's going to feel really intense. But if you can stay sensing, that's what dissolves this. True healing comes from being present with what is rather than trying to change or release or fix it. Okay, we're not releasing these emotions. We're actually just learning how to accept and to feel and to move toward without resistance. Just to be present with. And understanding we can't avoid painful emotions. We don't need to create a stress-free, pain-free life. It's not how life works. But we can learn to respond to these emotions in a way that prevents them from showing up and sabotaging our health and making us feel super overwhelmed and like we're living in survival and at capacity. I asked my Instagram community the other day, how many of you feel like you're surviving rather than thriving? And 92% said they feel like they're just constantly surviving rather than thriving. This is one of the most effective ways to move out of survival and into thriving. All right, my friends, that is it. Thank you so much all thanks for taking the time to be here and to listen. And if it felt like a lot, listen back, listen again, take this stuff in as you feel like you have enough capacity to do so. The guidebook will be coming, should have it up tonight in the members area. You'll have something to refer back to. Don't try to master this work overnight. It's not going to happen overnight, but it is one of the most powerful practices there is if you approach it from a place of just, this is important work. I want to show up and care for myself, not because I want to fix myself. Understanding that our bodies reflect our why and our how, not just what we do. Really, really important to remember that as you practice. So thanks for taking the time to hang out with me today. We're going to talk about next month. We're going to move kind of into polyvagal theory and vagus nerve work. And it's really going to help a lot of you that are big thinkers learn how to feel and stay a little bit more in the body, and also how to calm the body and the nervous system so that we have enough capacity to do this work, to turn toward these painful emotions and show up for ourselves. All right. So thank you all so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.